See you ready?
Hello, my name is Benjamin Jackson, and this is my Persepolis graphic novel project, and I will be interviewing my grandma about her coming of age story. Okay, so first question, can you describe your emotions about how you felt when you first came of the age?
The age of what?
The age of where you had more responsibility, like where you felt you were becoming more adult.
Oh, wow. I don't think it scared me at all. I was eagerly looking forward to being independent, more independent, particularly when it came to driving. You know, I really looked forward to that. I always had worries about who I was going to marry. Was I going to marry? Where was I going to have my job? I always wanted to go to foreign lands and do something good in some far off place.
Yes, ma'am. Once you became of age, what is the first thing that you did? Like, what was your first act of feeling like you were more free?
Oh boy. Let's see. Well, I had a children's group by the time I was 16, 15 actually. And many children I would gather on a Saturday, and we would make things, crafts, take walks around the neighborhood, clean things up. But when I was able to drive them somewhere, that was a really great feeling. I didn't have to depend on my mother driving me everywhere anymore. I was able to drive myself, and particularly so I could go do those things, not go to school. I never drove to school. I don't remember ever doing that. But that was really good. I was able to make some choices. I still had a curfew. I still had to be in at a certain time. And but it seemed like I was treated with excuse me, a little more responsibility. You know, I was able to make my plans. And the big one, actually, I went off to college when I was 17. I was a little bit young because of how I graduated. And after that first year, I had an epiphany that I didn't want to go back to that school. It wasn't for me. And I went home and told my father that I wanted to go to Japan. I just wanted to go over there and go around and you know, for my room and board, work or volunteer. And he said, well, he said, you can do that. You have to plan it yourself. And so I did do that. When I was 19, they took me up to Tacoma, Washington, and I got on a Japanese freighter and off I went. Didn't know anybody, not a soul. And that's what I did. I remember wearing high heels and everything to set off and do that. Nothing like I would do now. But that was a big coming of age. Excuse me.
Yes, ma'am. And I know you're big into music. Can you tell me the biggest reason why you started to get into music?
Oh my. I always liked to do things, but I was never accomplished, not at all. And when I was almost 50, Mr. Beach, Grandpa Vincent, decided he really wanted to play the cello. And so I was encouraging him to buy a cello right there in the music store. And I said, if you do that, I will get out my mandolin that I've had 25 years. When your mom was born, I had to put the mandolin away. I had no more time at that time, and I was trying to go to college and everything. So he told me, I told him, if he gets a cello, I'll get the mandolin out and let's start to do that. And so I did. And I liked kind of old timey music. I always did. And I had a book that had bluegrass tunes in it. So I began to try to teach myself, and I couldn't. And so I got a teacher, and then I just got hooked. And I took it, I was a substitute teacher in the Chandler schools, and I went everywhere. I didn't care if it was preschool or high school, but I took my mandolin and practiced when I wasn't teaching. And so that's essentially what happened. I just began to really love it. And sometimes I would turn down a job just to stay home and practice.
Yes, ma'am. What, when you were coming of age, what challenges did you have? Like, what challenged you as you were growing up and getting more responsibility?
When I was coming of age,
Yes, ma'am.
I would say that coming of age would have occupied me from 12 years old on up to, uh, adulthood. Biggest challenges for me were my love life. Okay, because I really loved somebody. And back in those days, there were a lot of restrictions on people. And that was always a challenge, all the way from 12 years on. And could I make it work? Could I let go and move on? A lot of things, but those were the challenges that I had. I didn't have too many others. That caused friction, within the home and all that kind of thing. So that was probably my biggest challenge.
That's actually great for my follow-up question. With all your new freedoms and all your new ideas as you come of age, how did your family and your friends react?
What was the first part of your question, Benjamin?
When you were coming of age, you got all these new freedoms and you did all these new things. How did your friends and family react?
I don't really recall that, because I did have a lot of freedom, much more than a lot of kids my age back then, back in the 50s. That would have been in the late 1950s and early 60s, very early 60s. And I did have a lot of freedom. I had the freedom to choose. And education was primary. I wasn't looking to get married and, get a job. I had to move on. That was expected by my parents. There were four girls, and we all, were expected to get the best education that we could. And very fortunately, I didn't have to pay for it or find scholarships. My mom and dad funded everything. So, I had to be very careful that I was able to do it. And so I don't recall anything other than I had the normal thing, a curfew, stuff like that. I was expected to study. I didn't like to do that. I really just wanted to go be social. I was involved in a lot of things, activities. And, but as far as having a challenge with my friends, I don't recall anything like that.
Yes, ma'am. And when you were coming of age, was there a relationship or an event that was very meaningful to you that you keep close to your heart till this day?
Mm. From from that time, coming of age. Who's going to see this?
No one is.
Besides you?
No one. I'm just using this for information to make a graphic novel.
Oh, okay. Do you have that question written down, or can you repeat it? Because that was a good one.
What what relationship or event during your coming of age was so meaningful to you that you keep close to your heart?
Okay. Walking with my dear boyfriend that I had loved since I was 12, from my house, walking up the street. There was kind of a forest. I lived by where the the family who created the bricks that built everything in the town. We lived close to them, and they had like a little forest. And I remember us. His name was Lou, and we walked up after a Young Life meeting at the house, and we walked up under those trees, and the moon was bright, and we kissed. You know, I was 14 or 15, I guess. And that is still a vivid memory. And I remember that when, because, bluegrass has a lot of songs like that about, under the pines and all that. And unfortunately, though, a lot of the songs also talk about what happened because I got eventually left in the dust. Okay, but I remember that particular moment was a beautiful one, and I've always kept it and hung on to it.
Yes, so how did you decide, this is a little bit more farther into your life, how did you decide to start Jam Pack?
That's way later than coming of age, although I came to my older age doing that. I hadn't even thought about doing it, but like I said, I took my mandolin everywhere. And in 1994, that's just 30 years ago, um, I played, I taught second grade right up here at Galveston, a block away, the biggest school in Chandler at the time, biggest elementary school. I was in a second grade class, and after school, two little boys, one named CJ, one named Lionel, came to the door, knocked, and said, "Can we play some more music?" Because everywhere I would sing and play with them. And I thought, I can't. I'm busy today, but let me think about it. Maybe we can next week. And then I talked to Grandpa Vincent and said, that's really, maybe we could do something for the neighborhood and have a little music gathering, each week. And his immediate response was, "I'll help you. I'll support you doing that." And so I thought, man, of my dreams and everything, thinking about what could something like that be called. Immediately it was put on me, I better do this. And my neighbors had a bunch of children right across the alley. And PJ or Pablo Meneses was also in that second grade class that day. And so I thought, well, let me start there. So I talked to them. Next Tuesday, I'm going to have a little music gathering. We'll play some harmonicas and sing songs. And so the very next Tuesday, there we were out in the front yard. This was in April, April 6th, something like that. And we played songs, 6 of them. 4 from that one family came. The youngest was 3 years old. And so we sang our songs, like the Circle song, Tom Dooley, Nat, and just by the look on their face and how much fun they had, I thought, okay, this is something. And I already called it Jam Pack. That was the name I had come up with in my on my own. I didn't want to call it a gang because we had such around the neighborhood. I thought, no, but it was going to be a jam. And so I came up with that unique spelling. And the rest is history because it just grew and grew and it never went back. Pretty soon I had to go to twice a week. So that,
So
go ahead. That's the story of how it actually got started and why.
so we're gonna go back to like your younger age. How did um how did your freedom in your younger age allow you to be more effective in your older age?
Oh my goodness, because I had a lot of experiences with that freedom. For instance, when I was 15, I was with a lot of people of color because my mother was a youth group leader out in a place we called the Heights, McLaughlin Heights. And she took me with her from the time I was 9 years old. And so I met all kinds of people and began being friends with families. I got to do all of that. I get to go and stay with them. And when I was 15, and these were some little white kids, they were very poor, living down in the same neighborhood. Back then, things weren't like they are now at all. And they were getting in trouble. And I thought, I should start a little group on Saturdays. I can ride my bike and we can do things. And so I talked around to people, and always I had my family's support to do stuff like that. Most kids wouldn't, not even, especially back then. And I just always had that kind of freedom to where I could try things, but my mom and dad always supported me. They paid for everything. In other words, whatever I needed to do or supplies, they would buy for me. My dad was very proud of that, that I was doing stuff like that. And that group grew to, one time we had 50 on a Saturday, but we would go do things and just, we cleaned up the basement of this one particular house. It was horrible. It was just so terrible. Dog do all over everything. And so that was our first act. And these were all younger kids. Like I was 15. One family had 10 children. And I'm friends with some of them to this day. Several have died by now, even though they were younger than me. But we cleaned up everything and got tables. And then some other church people knew what we were doing and they gave us stuff. And that's a big thing of when I had because I was I was always socially minded like that. I wanted to do things. And my family could have said, oh no, that's not good. You shouldn't do that. You're going to mix with the wrong people, blah, blah, blah. No, they were never like that. I was always supported and encouraged. That's the biggest thing. I had freedom like that to try out ideas, to go places, and I was never afraid. I got my first bike when I was 8 years old. And that was it, man. I was everywhere. And my little friend, his name was Kenny, we were 10. And that was a big thing on Saturdays. We'd take off on an adventure, pack a lunch, and we'd ride our bikes clear down into what we called the valley down by the river. And like I collected a cow skull and we'd go through old abandoned houses, never scared at all. Did that all the way till we were, say, 12 years old. Okay, so that definitely impacted what I've done all my life. I had freedom. Nobody could have contained me. Just put it that way. I was that kind of person.
Yes, ma'am. So you said when you were 16, you had your own little children's group, and you said throughout your life you've worked with kids. What inspires you to continue to work with kids like you do now?
I just had fun. Maybe I never grew up. I just had fun doing things like that. And I had fun seeing other people have fun. And it was never like I had to be queen of the mountain. I've never felt like that. I don't care if anybody knows. I just have fun doing that and making things happen. I am as what I describe a detail person. If I think of something, I'm going to think of all the little details to make it work. And I don't put it down easily ever. If I decide to do something, I'm going to do it and I'm going to try to make it work. And so it's not a matter of trying to be successful. I want to make it work, but success is a elusive thing. I just want to make whatever I start work, and I just enjoyed doing that. I don't know. It just I liked grown-up people too, boys and men and women. That wasn't a thing. I especially like boys, though, I must say. I would always sit with the football team at lunch, like in high school. That was my crowd. I don't know. And smart people. Even though I was not intellectual at all. But that I just always wanted to be around that kind of thing. But just for no, not to be successful or to get a scholarship, or I just like doing it. It made me happy. And I like to be happy. If I'm not happy, I don't want to do it.
Yes, ma'am. And this is my last question. So as you grow up, you get all this new information. What would you go back and tell your younger self?
My younger self,
Yes, ma'am.
I would probably tell my younger self to let go when something isn't working. Do not drag it on through all your life, Let recognize. That's a big thing, is to be able to discern. It's a very important word. To be able to discern when something is not for you, a relationship is not for you, and then mind that. Don't just overlook it and say, oh, well, I'll be able to fix it, or blah, blah, that kind of thing. No, be able to discern from a young age what is the right thing for you to do, not for anybody else, but for you. What is the right thing to do that's going to lead somewhere? And that I would tell myself definitely, because that was a downfall. That and that thing again about being tenacious, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing. To be tenacious, to get something done and all that, like jam pack, I have to have a great deal of tenacity, I call it. It's kind of a trademark of mine. Okay, when I dealt with relationships or something, that was not a good thing. I should have been able to let go when it was handwriting on the wall, red flag, whatever you want to call it. I should have been able to let go. That would I would tell myself and any other selves out there, know when to call it and move on. That's it. Now you heard it all.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for taking the time to let me interview you, and I hope you have a good day.
Oh, I hope so too. Got to go to work now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you very much, Benjamin. Those were good, thoughtful questions. I'll be anxious to see what you come up with. Is it
Yes,
going
ma'am.
to be written?
Yes, ma'am. It's gonna be like a graphic novel.
Like a what kind?
A graphic novel.
A graphic. What's that mean?
So basically, I'll have your story, and it's gonna be like pictures and words.
Oh, that sounds exciting. Okay. Are you going to make the pictures? Do you,
Yes, ma'am.
do you illustrate? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. That sounds like a great project. All right. You're a good kid. Take some of
Yes,
my
ma'am.
lessons. All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. But freedom is a great thing. And it's a great thing when you're young. But the people have to trust you in order to give it to you. And my parents
Yes, ma'am.
always did trust me. I guess they trusted all of us. I never felt like I wasn't trusted, you know.
Yes, ma'am.
Um, but those were different times. That was 70 years ago. It's a lot better now, anyway. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Bye, Grandma. Love you.
I love you too, kiddo.